So here's the problem. You feel overwhelmed, scattered, out of sync. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you feel like you've taken 10 steps forward. Other times you feel like you've taken 10 steps back. But unfortunately, you don't know why. Well, in this video, I will be discussing everything you need to know about how to get back on track and get things moving in the right direction, and how the moon can help you do that. And I'll do it in 15 minutes or less. So stick around, you definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. So if you are new around here, welcome. My name is Mel. I'm a professional astrologer and sound therapist, and I'm the founder of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So as promised, this is the first video in my Moon Mastery series. So whether you are following this live during Moon Mastery Week or you are checking this out on the replay, understand that over the next series of videos, you will get to understand just how important the moon is and how working with the energy of the moon is vital to living your best possible life. All right, so without further ado, let's get into today's topic, which is why you're living out of sync and how to fix it. So we've got 15 minutes on the clock, so let's go. All right, so like I said, the problem is that you feel like you are out of sync. Maybe you feel like there's no rhyme or reason to anything that you're doing. Maybe you're doing things and not necessarily seeing results. Or maybe you just feel off, right? It's really disadvantageous. That's not the word I want to use. It really sucks, let's say that. It really sucks to be doing things without a broader context, right? We are all told to hustle, to grind, to manifest, to do all the things. But if you don't necessarily have the bigger picture or the framework within which to do these things, you kind of just feel like you are spinning your wheels and getting no results. Or maybe you're getting results sometimes and not other times. And that can be super frustrating. However, much like everything else, astrology has an answer for this, and it's actually quite simple. It's the moon. The moon in and of itself, and the various expressions of the moon, and the various ways that the moon can denote time in our lives is the answer to getting out of sync and getting into flow. Okay. Now, one of the things that has become extremely apparent is the fact that here in the West, we are very much sun-centric. Even the astrology, tropical Western astrology, is sun-centric, meaning that it really focuses on the sun and specifically your sun sign. That's why everyone's like, oh, I'm a Virgo, I'm a Scorpio, blah, 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 blah. And of course, that's relevant. But there's a whole other side to it that I feel like society, at least over here, completely ignores, right? So the sun represents your outward expression. It's the masculine energy. So it's all about action and doing. Hence why society is always like, do this, manifest this, make $10,000 months. It's all about pushing forward and exerting energy, right? But again, that is only half the battle or half the story. The other half is your internal world. Our internal world is what creates our reality. And if you're constantly focusing on doing, you're not actually creating your reality. You literally are just spinning your wheels and kind of getting nowhere. The moon represents our inner world. It represents our emotions. And most importantly, in the context of astrology and in the context of how I will be discussing the moon in this series, it's a timing technique. It is the container within which we do everything. And that's how things make sense. That's how we do things or end up doing things at the right time. And that's how life starts to flow instead of us pushing and pulling and exerting energy through life, or worst case scenario, being dragged by life all the time. All right. So when it comes to the moon, I know that you're pretty much familiar with the new moon and the full moon. This is what everyone's familiar with right now. And I love the fact that society is actually paying attention to these things because they're super important. New moon is when we plant seeds and set intentions. Full moon is when our manifestations come to fruition, right? Super important. However, there's so much more to the lunar cycle than that. And the lunar cycle is really a microcosm to the macrocosm of our lives, meaning that within 1 month, we go through a whole cycle, a cycle of beginning, middle, and ending, a cycle of creation, fruition, and then dissemination and decline. And then we start it over all over again, right? We do this regularly. Yet, the way that we're conditioned to work, the way that we are conditioned to be productive, the way that we are conditioned to move through life completely ignores this cycle. If you're constantly in the doing phase, in the action phase, when are you resting? When are you preparing for the next cycle, right? Do you even know what you're supposed to be doing at a particular time? Probably not. And again, that's probably why you feel out of sync. But this is where the moon really shines. It gives you a blueprint, it gives you the instruction manual to life. Okay. So let us talk about, generally speaking, how we start working with the moon. Two phases or two categories that are really important are waxing and waning. Okay. And I'm sure you've heard of this before, but let's dive a little deeper so that you really understand what these phases mean and how to use them. So, in between the new moon and the full moon is when the moon is waxing. And this is when we do. This is when we exert energy. This is when we manifest, when we do our rituals, when we take our steps. This is the active part of the lunar cycle. If we're talking about balance, this would be like the masculine part of the lunar cycle where we are concerned with the external and when we are doing and manifesting and hustling and all of that, right? This is when we build momentum. This is when we start things. This is when we literally take action steps towards the completion of our goals. So think of it as like a race, right? I'm going to be overusing this analogy, so get comfortable with it, all right? So, the waxing phase, let's put it this way. The new moon is when that gun goes off and you begin the race. The waxing phase is when you are literally running to the finish line. You're literally in the throes of this marathon. So you're concerned with exerting your energy in order to cross that finish line, right? So during the half of the month, because literally it's half of the month when the moon is waxing, this is what you're concerned with. So for about 2 weeks every month, you're getting things together. You are taking steps, hustling, grinding, putting out offers, working, creating, all the things, right? And so you allow yourself or you prepare in order to do that. And so when the moon is waxing, this is when you should plan to literally do things, right? Right. Now we get to the full moon phase, and this is when you finally cross the finish line. You ran the race, you're at the finish line, and you are pumped. Your friends are cheering you on. Everyone is celebrating you. You're taking selfies. It's just like the best thing ever because when you started, when that gun went off, you literally ran, and now you are at the finish line. And there's this feeling of accomplishment and celebration and everything that you should be doing, right? Or not everything that you should be doing, but everything that you work towards, you now have. Maybe you even have a medal around your neck because you finished in first or second place, right? Full moon is really dope because it's culmination, it is illumination, right? But it's the finish line. That's the part of the lunar cycle that's celebratory. But then we move on to the second half of the lunar phase or the lunar cycle, which is the waning phase. This is like coming off of this marathon and then resting. Maybe after the race, you go with your friends and you get something to eat. Then you go home, you shower, and you get into bed. That is the essence and the energy of the waning phase. So this is when you're not doing. This is when you're resting. This is when you are powering down. After spending 2 weeks of doing, now you're going to be spending 2 weeks of not doing. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that that's a little difficult to do in this day and age, right? It's very rare that you could just take 2 weeks off unless you're on vacation. But this means that you're not starting anything new. If you have something that's a part of your daily or weekly routine, you do that, but you don't necessarily do more than that. This is the time to conserve your energy. Not only that, this is the time that you are getting rid of what no longer serves you. This is where emotions play a really big part in this whole cycle. Emotions, this is the time to really be examining your emotions, really processing them, and getting rid of what no longer serves you. This is the time when you feel things and then you release them. It's part of the powering down cycle, and it's the part of the lunar cycle where you literally get ready to do everything all over again. And you do that by resting. You do that by powering down. You do that by taking quiet time for reflection, feeling your emotions and allowing them to be released. Okay. This is where society kind of gets it wrong because, yes, the whole first half of the month is doing, but the second half is rest. And that's exactly what the waning phase is like, or at least what it should be used for. And then you get to that point right before the new moon where you create fertile soil to plant new seeds and start the cycle all over again. Now, understand that you've got 2 weeks of doing, 2 weeks of resting, and then doing it all over again. This is how you start to align with nature and start to experience flow in your life. Now, this is just the very top level of this. Over the next couple of days, we're going to get much deeper, but this is a great starting point for you to think about in terms of how to plan your month and how to start aligning with the moon. And so you may be wondering, okay, so how do I actually do this? Like, how can I really start implementing this? So, the one thing I will say that you should do at the outset is to start tracking where the moon even is, right? It's like if you know that today the moon is in Capricorn and it's in the waning phase, that'll give you an indication of what you should be doing or what you should be focusing on at this time, okay? So, one thing I'll tell you to do, there's two things I'll tell you to do. First, follow me on Instagram. This is where you can find out where the moon is on any given day because I will always post wherever the moon is on a regular basis. So, number one, follow me over there. Number two, download my free mini moon map. Okay, this is what I like to call a living lunar workbook, which isn't just going to show you or give you information on the lunar cycle. It's going to give you the space to start tracking not only where the moon is, but how it's affecting you personally. This is the very first, and I feel the most important step when it comes to lunar living and starting to flow with the lunar cycle. So for instance, if the moon is currently in Capricorn waning, you're going to talk about how it makes you feel. You're going to you're going to sort of like a journal, right? Or a diary. You're going to detail how the moon is making you feel emotional wise. Are you feeling sad, happy, accomplished, right? You have the space to write it within there. Then you're going to move on to what you need during this phase of the moon. So maybe you need rest, especially if it's in the waning phase. Or maybe you need help from others or you need advice, especially if the moon is in the waxing phase. And then you are going to take one aligned action that's in alignment with the energy of that particular moon. Okay, so this is going to be really important because this is how you're going to start to track your activities as it relates to the lunar cycle. Okay, so this is a workbook that is chock full of everything you need in order to start living this way and in order to start changing your life one moon cycle at a time. And the best part is it is completely free. So the link is in the description box below. It is called the Mini Moon Map, and it's really here to help you start lunar living and living life the way that you're not only meant to, but that is in your best interest. All right. And so I think that's pretty much it for this video. All right. And so with that, link is in the description box below. And we've got a little time to spare, which is cool. So in that time, let's talk about the next video in this series. So now that we've gotten a broad overview of the lunar cycle, let's take it deeper and talk about each of the 8 lunar phases that the lunar cycle contains. All right. And so to keep the party going, you're going to want to check out this video right here, which is number 2 in the series. It'll also be linked in the description box below. All right, my loves, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you in the next video. And in the meantime, download that mini moon map so you can start getting your life together. All right, my loves, see you in the next one.